Hi, welcome to the latest video from Inavate TV. I'm joined today by Rob Moodey from Matrox. Welcome, Rob.
Hello, Paul. Good to be here.
So we're talking about a very interesting subject today, digital signage, which is always relevant, I think even more so maybe in the last 2 years or so, but also ease of use, which is a big trend we're seeing as a magazine on the whole. So first question fired at you, Rob. What do you think people want from a digital signage system? I mean, it's been around for years, but what do you think people want from a system right now? What are people asking you for?
I think if we look back to the old BBC motto, the old inform, educate, and entertain, I think that's what people still want from their signage system. Although it was defined for broadcast, it works very well for signage. And yeah, they want to know what platform to get to, of course, what businesses are nearby, but they also want to be educated and entertained as well. And we've seen a lot of that public information recently in the COVID times. But if you think of how the digital signage has evolved to include the interactivity of phones joining in, QR codes, especially with COVID, and we look to what the signage industry can deliver that interactive can't, it's big and bright. It's the sort of walls that you just can't get in your phone, that you can look at with whilst you're walking through a public area without bumping into someone, something you can't do with your phone. So adding the phones to it and the interactivity is great, but that big and bright is where we start to add value by allowing the operators of the signage to add our boxes onto a little signage player and get the big wall as economically as they can. So, what do people want? They want all of those things, and we're enabling it to be big and bright.
I mean, it's a very hot topic conversation at the moment in terms of products. There seems to be a shortage of them. The ones there are seem to be rising in price. So, I mean, do you think people are trying to do maybe more with less? And do you think that's applicable to digital signage in particular? And how can you guys kind of help with that, I guess?
Well, I think that's always been a pressure on our industry. And I think what I'd focus on here is again the screen size, whether we're talking diagonals or pixels. The eye-grabbing walls like the ones we help to create, increasingly LED based, of course. And on that big canvas, the creatives are trying to subscribing to the less is more approach, simple but effective. And so many of the signage applications are pursuing less complex hardware. So they're going for low cost, little more than a browser perhaps, but a little extra is needed to get to the big wall. And that's where we come in. If you can harness that signal output and facilitate a big wall, you've solved that interesting challenge of reducing the IT complexity. It's a less complex compute form, but you've compensated with a little extra AV capability like our quad head to go to get to that big wall. And that's, if you can do that and still manage it with something that's reliable and quiet, then we've added our bit to the party to everybody's satisfaction.
So a big wall doesn't necessarily mean a big cost.
Absolutely not. If you can do that wall with, for example, multiple full HD panels instead of a single UHD panel, for the same diagonal, of course, you've saved quite a lot of money at the capital cost, and you've made it a lot easier to support if you've got something like a few pixel failures that mean you need to change part of that wall. Much easier on the budget to change a quarter of the wall than to change the whole wall. So the idea of doing big but economically is definitely something that people are pursuing.
Fantastic. I'm sure there'll be music to the ears of many of the integrators watching this today. Final question. It's something we've really seen in that magazine as a big shift in the last 5 years. There used to be so much talk of functionality and things that had 10 features now had 20 or 50 or 100, and there was this huge rush for extra features. There seems a real shift in the last few years of the complete opposite, almost that ease of use. So it seems to become the sort of number one priority now, and the language that manufacturers are using. How important do you think ease of use is when it comes to digital signage in terms of the day-to-day use, but also driving the adoption as well?
I think there's a couple of different slants you can use at that one, and I draw a distinction between the ease of use for the integrator who's deploying it, and the ease of use for the individuals who are making use of the content. One's about understanding a task, and the other one's about understanding people. But actually, people are involved in all of it. So you mentioned the idea of taking buttons off of things or putting buttons onto things. There was also a period where everything was done in software. You had a bit of hardware that was just a box, and you needed software to drive it. And what we found was that a lot of our integrators were saying, well, you know what, I don't want to do that. I just want to take it out the carton and get on with it. Can't you put some intelligence back into the box? Give me a few buttons on the box so that I've got some local control. So that's one of the things that we heard and we implemented on the Quad Head to Go, so that you can actually take it out of the carton, connect it up, and get from out of the carton to any one of the rectangular combinations of 4 outputs, 4x1, 3x1, 1x3, and so on, in a matter of a few seconds, just by pressing the buttons on the front panel. You can set it up without the sources being present. Again, just by using the buttons on the front panel, and that was much easier than having to wheel up a laptop and hook that on and connect it all up on the network to configure. So that ease of deployment shows up for the integrator, of course, in fewer hours on site. They get the job done quicker. And it shows up to the user in reduced billable hours. It gets done quicker, more economically for them. So that ease of use, I think, is absolutely crucial. I think whether we're talking about that crew deploying it or whatever, it's a smooth deployment that's going to get repeated, and that's one of the core values that we get into there. If you can make the deployment smooth, they'll be back for more. The same actually goes for the content. If the content's easy to work with and easy to assimilate, people will come back and look again to see what today's message is. So that ease of use works all the way around. Did I get what I wanted without faffing around? A smooth experience gets repeated.
Yeah.
Ease of use leads to repeated use. It's important to all of us.
Brilliant. That's a great message to end on, Rob. Many thanks for your time. I'm sure people have got some things to think about from the video and the things you've said, and it's great to hear that manufacturers are really looking at, driving adoption by making systems easy to use. Rob, many thanks for your time.
My pleasure, Paul. Pleasure to be here.